Hello and welcome back to Weekly Polls Pick of the Week. This is episode number 77. I'm back here once again with Steve and Jared. My name's Mike. We're talking comics, and I'm going to get right into the topic of the day, or the week, if you will. So one of the comics I read is kind of based on a true story or based on something that really happened. So got this idea in my head of why aren't there more nonfiction comics or adaptations out there? Certainly don't see a lot, and I could see it be done more and appeal to more people, but maybe the market isn't there. But I do think that in manga there is quite a variety of different things, like how-to books that are all in manga form, and all kinds of maybe manuals and things like that. So any thoughts on this?
I think you're right, Mike. I think there's a few and far between as far as American comics go when it comes to nonfiction material. Or if there is nonfiction material, it's how to read comics nonfiction material.
Yeah, that was one that I thought of.
Yeah.
I actually read I think it's a graphic novel or whatever you call it, a comics version of what is psychology, like the history of psychology. I actually thought it was kind of good, and I think
that's pretty cool.
There's books on economics and things like that are out there. I think Jared, you had mentioned something. Is it Sapiens?
Yes, they did. Yuval Harari is doing a graphic novel adaptation of his book Sapiens, and it's actually quite spectacular because he actually approaches the topic from a completely different angle than he does in this book. So it's almost like reading something new. So it's actually a lot of fun, and I couldn't go without mentioning Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics. That is actually a great book in and of itself, not just for comics, but also just understanding symbols in art and how it moves how it trains your brain to look at symbols and what symbols mean and stuff like that. So it's very, very informative book.
I was looking around here because I believe I own that one. I'll have to double check to make sure that's the one that I have. That's probably one I should definitely read.
Yeah, it's worth it. It's very good.
Yeah, I think I think this may have to do more with the perception of the market rather than the actual market. I think most people who aren't familiar with this format probably don't think that readers would be, or comic book readers would be, interested in historical retellings or history, or I think that's probably what I think they consider it kind of a waste of time because the reader base isn't there. That's not what they're interested in. But I think it would actually do pretty well. I think when you look at like a 200-page graphic novel to read like a historical event versus a 400, 500, 600-page doorstop, I mean, I think it would be more accessible for more people and a little bit easier to jump into. So I think it'd be worth giving it a shot. I think if you have the right, it all comes down to presentation too. Because if you cheap out on the artwork, you cheap out on the paper, you cheap out on the covers and all that stuff, it's not going to do as well. But if you put a little bit of some resources into it, you put some you put some care into it, I think it could work out really well. I think you do really well. You probably won't sell something like, maybe other more popular books or like the classics that we know today, but I think it'd do okay. I mean, I think worth giving it a shot, depending on the subject matter. I think like if you look back in history, if it's a battle or something, if it's something a little bit mundane that has a lot of dialogue and no action, that may be harder. But if it's something that is like a battle in history that took place, or an event, or a really very dramatic event that happened, I think that'd do better. Depends on the topic too.
Yeah. You gotta wonder, because how well do actual history books sell? You know what I mean? And how well do I mean, I know there's a lot of self-help books out there that sell bonkers. Could you picture self-help comics?
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of coloring books that promote wellness or something. But
yeah.
I
not something
I
I'd
was
be
thinking
interested in, but
biographies. There is a Philip K. Dick biography graphic novel that I have been meaning to check out. I don't know if it's any good, but
oh yeah, I think Brian Michael Bendis did a autobiography comic.
Wow.
One for Image, I think, a while ago. But of course, that's very self-serving. But
yeah, but when people write their own, that's kind of weird. But yeah, what's the other one? Drawing Blood, the book from the that's supposed to be autobiographical. I know they have some, it's obviously not it's not actual events, just more based on, but I guess it has happened before.
Well, Steve, you want to kick us off here?
Yeah, sure. So my first pick this week is one that I had really high hopes for at the beginning, but we'll get into that, which is Vicarious #5 by Boom Studios. This is the last issue of the series. I thought this one had a lot of potential starting out. The idea behind it was, in this world there are proxies, which mean that if you choose to, you can get an implant if you have the resources or the ability to get an implant. You get an implant, and then you can put yourself in the internet as a proxy, and people can pay to experience what you're experiencing. So they'll tell you what to do, and they'll have you set up scenarios that you go out and do things. And I'm sure everyone can imagine the kind of shenanigans you can get up to when that happens. So you kind of put yourself out there, and you're selling your body, and you're sharing your experiences with everyone. And I thought that was a really great setup. I thought it was pretty thought-provoking. You think about content creation, you think about kind of like sex work, and you think of some other things that you can really play around with that theme and really have some interesting storytelling. But unfortunately, about halfway in, the story turns itself upside down and changes direction pretty quickly. Just as soon as we begin learning about the systems that are in place for proxies to exist, and the business side of it, and the seedy underbelly that exists, which is bound to happen, it just kind of all changes direction very quickly, and it very drastically changes, which I guess is kind of inevitable in this story. You kind of get the feeling that it's not going to last forever. Most stories don't. But the second half of the story really went predictable. Like it went just as pretty much almost beat for beat what you would expect, which is really a bummer, because I hoped that it would do something a little different. It would kind of, I wanted to learn more about the business side and what it's like to do that kind of work and all those things. I think there's a lot of stories left in this world that can be told, so I hope that they continue with it. The second half of the very last issue was it was just like a snooze fest. It was boring. It was everything you would expect it to be, and not in a good way. We've seen it every time. It's the most predictable ending you can imagine, which it just, I guess that's okay. I mean, but after such a great idea to start out with, it was a bummer to see it go the direction it went. But I will say again, the artwork did not fit the story whatsoever. The artwork has more of a manga feel to it, and the story has a very gritty, kind of street level kind of approach, and the two just did not match. I think the artwork is fine, just didn't fit the story. But eventually, I kind of got past that because I liked the story so much. But it just, the last issue was a bummer, and I wish they'd have done something a little different than what we've seen 1,000 times before.
Well, did you end up getting used to the artwork? Because I remember, because I read the first one, and I think we both weren't a huge fan.
Yeah. I after a while, I just kind of try to put it out of my mind. Like, the artwork's not bad. It just feels off. It feels weird. This is the artwork.
Yeah.
I kind of just just ignored it. But yeah, unfortunately, it became more irritating as the story became more irritating. It just goes. So yeah, what is it? It is what it is. I think it's. I hope they continue though, because I think there's other stories that can be told in this world. I hope that they do something different next time they have. There's a set. There's the story is left in a place where you can do other stories with it. You can kind of play around this world, and I think it's really fascinating. I think you do a lot of interesting stuff with it. I can't, but people who know how to tell stories can. You know.
Yeah. Well, the first one up for me is called Bronze Faces, #1. This is by Boom Studios. And the writer is, I think, 2 mononyms, at least, Shobo and Shof, with artwork by Alexander Tenengi. So this is what appealed to me right off the bat is I could kind of tell that this was set somewhere in West Africa, and sure enough, a lot of it takes place in Nigeria, and I visited there a few times. So this is kind of similar to one of the books I read not too long ago. That's almost like kind of have this reverse Indiana Jones theme. So, but there's more to it than that. But it really starts off with the theft of an artifact, which is this bronze mask that's well known in certain parts of, I think, Benin and Nigeria, that is stolen. And then it immediately cuts to, this is the theme, by the way, for me for this entire week, is comics that within 2 pages cut to a new scene or a new time. And I don't know what I don't know if it was just random, but this one kept changing places, kept going back in time in a very short period in issue #1, and I just feel like it's trying to do too much. What's really interesting, though, there's some positives. I thought the artwork was different, and I enjoyed it. They were doing some different things with layout as well, almost like I think like a kaleidoscopic style. But the what I was going to say earlier is they use pidgin language, which is kind of a lingua franca. And if you don't know the words, you're going to be lost. I know just a few that I recognized. And then there is a relationship between this artist, and for a while I actually thought it was his sister, but I think they're much more than that. They're lovers. But that was just maybe just not paying attention. But again, I just really thought, I found it hard to follow, just too much happening. It has some really interesting concepts and new, but yeah, I'm not sure if I would continue with this one.
There's been a couple reverse Indiana Jones books lately that you've read.
Yeah, there was a one shot that I read. It's called Finders Keepers. I forget. I think it was Image that put it out. It was just but that's kind of like a series. Like they're doing a bunch of these kind of, shining on diverse voices or different cultures, if you will.
Cool. Well, two bummer of an issues. All right. So,
yeah,
it only gets something gets worse for me. This one wasn't that bad, but I have a few that were a little bit worse.
Oh, geez,
a little bit.
Well, I'll try to cheer us up a little here. I thanks to our review copy friends at Distillery Comics, I read Defiant #1, and by Chuck Austin and Pat Oliff. And I found it to be a pleasant read. Actually, I thought it was. I like the length of these big issues. It was like 48 pages, and I liked reading it with it had some big bright artwork, so the artwork was pleasant to look at, and the setting was cool. It was a cool sci-fi setting. It had aliens. It kind of reminded me a little bit of either a Star Wars or a Star Trek or something like that, or maybe Babylon 5ish. A little more alien-y than Star Trek, but it was interesting. It was an interesting setting. There's a lot of expo and setup in this one with the characterizations between the characters, and some of the character conflicts with each other were kind of hit me over the head a little bit with their obviousness. But once you got past that, I thought it was a pretty cool story, and I thought it had a couple of little insights into the main character. I like how they did a different tone of like a black and white version of the artwork whenever there was some memories that the guy was remembering, and I like how it was I like how it ended. I thought it was a good lead into what could possibly be a pretty good series if they once it gets going. It set up some stuff. It set up interesting alien stuff that would be neat to explore, and I think once it got past the little clunky parts, I think it was pretty good issue overall.
Nice. The length is, I think, it's pretty often that when you're enjoying the book anyway, when there's stinkers, like Mike had some stinkers this week. But when you're enjoying the book, it's nice for it to continue past the 30 or so pages. So yeah, I think the size and the presentation really go a long way with enjoying the distillery stuff.
And they have a great presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And you're basically getting 2.5 comics. And I think if you look at the price, it's a little bit, it's higher than what we normally pay, but you're getting pretty good bang for your buck too.
Yeah, at least I would say 2 for 1 at least. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was thinking because the size is bigger, so you're getting potentially more per page than you would. But yeah, at least 2.
Oh yeah.
And some of these have so many ads.
Yeah, before, I know I've heard some people complain about the cover price, and I want to, if you're one of those people who are listening, no shade at you, because you're listening and we love you, but just before you complain about that too much, just consider, and I had to do this for myself too, is how often do we pay $6 for a 29-page Marvel book?
Yeah. That
is on bad paper and is, just not have the same presentation. So just consider that before you rant and rave about the cover price.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So thanks again once to Distillery.
Yes, indeed. I hope to get them on the podcast to discuss some stuff when you hear back. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we hear back from them. So the next one for me is Long Cold Winter #3. It's by Mad Cave. I want to give it a shout out to Mad Cave for doing off the wall stuff. I think it's nice when you have a publisher who does weird things. Even if I don't always enjoy it, I'm glad that they're swinging for the fences and seeing what works, giving people a chance to tell their stories. So in this one, we do learn more about our characters, and we do get some world building. So we do get some history with some of the characters, where they came from and what they're carrying, what makes them so sought after, and also the world, how dangerous it is. It's kind of broadening. We find the other dangers in the world and how it works and how the people behave in that world, and a little bit some hints on what caused this calamity, why the air is so unbreathable and everything's dead. There's no vegetation. So the artwork is different, and it's kind of it's like shaky and chaotic is the best way I can describe it. It's just kind of, it's different. The story itself, I think it's fine. I think the artwork is not bad. It just, and it does in a way fit the story because it does feel very fast and quick and moving and dangerous. You don't want to feel comfortable. So overall, I will still be, I will keep up with this one, and I'm not, 2 feet on, but I'm on board with this one. So hopefully we get more of what we got in this issue. I think this issue was a good kind of a good, there's lots of substance in it, and there's lots of meat on the bone to kind of keep us going. So it was needed, because I think we needed something like this issue to keep us going in the series, at least for me.
Yeah, I that one I did add to my list, and I've yet to receive number 2 or 3. So I think
wow.
maybe that got lost somewhere. I really liked. When I looked up the artist, I read that he's inspired by both street art and music. So kind of a different approach.
I can see the street art. I can see graffiti. It does have a very, very, very bold lines. And I can see the street art. It's funny you mentioned. Now that you say that, I can see the inspiration in his work.
Yeah. So next up, I have, might get the award for one of the longest titles. Mine is a Long, Lonesome Grave, number 1. This is from Oni Press by Justin Jordan and Chris Sheehan. This was probably one of the better ones that I read this week, so not all of them, were stinkers, as you said, Steve, but I had a few. But part of it is also maybe it just wasn't for me, because I know people do, these artists they're trying, they're doing their thing, and most of what I read is, these are not, Marvel or DC. So this takes place in West Virginia, where our main character is just released from prison after 20 years. And we find out very quickly that he killed his wife under some very strange circumstances that are not explained. And we learn that there's something to do with witchcraft or the occult. So this one is, Steve, I thought about you because this one is very dark. The main character is morally gray at best, and he's trying to pick up his life. He's not even happy to be released from prison. He's like, I should still be there, and and he does some terrible things, but you don't totally know why. You think it may be related to his beliefs about these, I don't know if it's a coven of witches or witchcraft or Wiccans, or I'm not sure. It's not totally clear. So I would say this one, the artwork is okay. It's maybe not great. There's a few scenes that were depicted quite well in terms of horror or shocking, if that's your kind of thing. I know that's not for everybody. But I think this one does have promise. But there was just a few things that maybe it was the writing or just some elements that didn't put it over, the hump for me to have this as my pick of the week.
Certainly made a name for myself, haven't
I? Well, I think over time we get to know what we like and don't like. So.
Yeah. I'm gonna further cement that reputation with my pick of the week, as we'll talk about it later. But
oh yeah.
So it just didn't quite have the oomph to get it over the finish line for your pick, huh?
No, I think maybe it just I think you used the word clunky, Jared. There was a moment there where I was just like, yeah, it just didn't seem to be moving. But it kind of came around at the end and setting it up maybe for the next one.
I think we got both Steve and I read Dust to Dust number 3, and by J.G. Jones and Phil Bram, and this continues on the story of this small town in the Dust Bowl in the 30s, and once again, I am enjoying this book quite a bit. I really like the slow roll of characterization that is being presented here. We're really getting to know various personalities in this town, and I like the how the town itself is starting to become part of the setting, part of the. It's the setting. It's the town is becoming a character in and of itself. It has it has your hangouts, the general stores, and it has your snake charmer, religious man giving speeches, and just all kinds of quirky stuff that you would find in a small town during that time. And the artwork once again presents it in that sepia tone that gives you the feel of a Western Dust Bowl type setting, and there's still some mystery going on. There's still some what's the word I'm looking for? Is this either shenanigans by somebody in power or something weirder? So and it's being unraveled slowly, and I kind of like it. I'm kind of enjoying that aspect of it, and I was actually surprised it came out so soon after the other one. So I like it's been regular so far, and really enjoying this.
Yeah, I think you pretty much had covered everything I had written down for this one. I was surprised that it's coming out so quickly. I think that's one of the things we talked about when we first talked about this book, or I think it was this book.
Yeah.
About it being consistent and kind of keeping the momentum going. You kind of get the feeling like the whole thing's done and they're just releasing it.
Maybe, yeah, because creator owns stuff, you worry about that,
Yeah. But yeah, I think the colors and the artwork are really, really neat. There's only one face that made me think of, and I had to look up the name, but it's Julia Stiles, the actress. I think she was in some movies. She was very popular in the late 90s, early 2000s. She was in pretty much everything. There's one panel that looks like it's like her face, but that was it. So I don't know why I didn't pick that stuff. But yeah, I think the building the mystery, there's ways to do that and be kind of a like tease the reader or the viewer and to kind of be annoying about it. But I think it's building the mysteries and building that tension in a way that's very subtle and very methodical, I guess is the best way to put it. I think it's being done very well. It's building it without being annoying, or without being like just questions for question's sake.
Right.
It's there's a nice flow to it. So I think they're doing a very good job with that. And yeah, I think it's so far it's a very well crafted story. I love all the characters. All the characters feel like people. They feel like they're very, they're very solidified. They feel like there's someone, you can kind of like, so
yeah, and they feel like they have a history. Like they're not just there to talk to the main character. That's it, and each one feels like it has its own history.
Yeah, very good, very very good. Yeah, I'm enjoying it quite a bit, and I'm glad give this one a shot. I wasn't the most excited about the first issue, but it is very it's really I think it's unraveling very well.
Yeah, and so easy on the eyes.
Yeah, beautiful book, beautiful art.
I'm gonna get caught up at some point. So yeah, at least you're selling it to me at least. So next up for me, I have Let This One Be a Devil, another long title. And this is also known as a true weird story. This is from Dark Horse Comics by James Tinian. And there are many other, there's the artist, one of the artists for story 1 is Piotr Kowalski. And then there's another story in here, and those are a different set of writers and artists. And I hadn't written it down, but I'll just mention it quickly. It's Rachel Deering and Jesse Lonergan. Anyway, just to get into it now, I believe this is a spin-off of something that I didn't read, which is the true stories of the weird. So I think this is based on, accounts that have actually taken place. And in this one, as I mentioned, there are two stories. The first one I liked much better than the second one. But and in story number one, that we have this takes place back in 1909. We have this kind of bookish character who is returned to his family from, I think he's been studying in the city or what have you, and he investigates this very strange occurrence, and then there is some kind of a devil character. This is very early, and this is issue number one, and I assume I know it's continuing. And then we kind of learn about the history of the town, because we do have a change in time, cut to then 1735 and a woman giving birth, and it was that part was actually very interesting, I think, and the artwork I really enjoyed. I don't it's kind of maybe hard to describe, but the very detailed and just haunting and well done. In story number two, which has its own title, Shattered and Shook, this is black and white story, and does not seem connected. And like I said, maybe we won't go into it too much, but it just really didn't appeal to me very much. And the artwork was so different from the first, but I guess that's fine. It took me a while to realize, frankly, maybe I'm just slow, that there are two stories in here, because I was like, what's going on? So I don't know. I guess it's an anthology, Steve, or we've been talking about that, and I didn't figure it out until maybe after I had read it. So maybe I should reread it. I don't know, but I like the first story very much. It's just the second one is kind of about ghosts or whatever, and I just couldn't get into it.
Just couldn't get over the finish line, huh?
Yeah, so you know how we've talked, and I hate to say it, we hate to bring it up again or pick on them, but Stand Still, they made the change in the artwork. This was almost as abrupt as that, where the artwork was just like very immersive, and then you're moving into something that's so different. And like I said, I wasn't mentally prepared, so had I known, I would have been like, oh, okay, this is now a new story. I thought it was like we were going back in time. So that was maybe my mistake.
That must really suck to have to come into a book like that in the middle and pick up where someone else left off. It does such a disservice to the other artist, because instead of just enjoying, I think some people probably can do that, just, not let it bother them and continue. It must be tough to be in that position as an artist, to get a gig and then have to follow someone else with a completely different style that everyone's used to. That must be really tough.
Yeah, that's not necessarily what's happening here. Just because I realized later they're two separate stories by different artists.
Yeah. I'm still bitter about Stand Still. Sorry.
No, I mean, they got us.
Yeah, they did. They got us. Yeah, they did. All right, so the next one for me was almost my pick of the week. It was The New Gods 3. This is a book that I did not expect to even like when I picked up the first issue. It just kind of looked kind of interesting. I like the cosmic DC stories, the Dark Seed stuff, even some of the Green Lantern stuff, the deep space, weird stuff that happens in space. I've always enjoyed that kind of thing. So, well, I'll give it a try. I ended up really liking the first issue. I like the second issue. The third issue is really good. I love the history that we learn, and the kind of going back and learning about the gods, and and I'm not as interested in the story that's happening now. It's still fine. I mean, I don't dislike it, but it's when you start to kind of dive into the history and all the storylines that have happened before, and the artwork for the flashback or for the it looks like a painting. I forget I should have written the artist's name down. I believe they've done other work for DC. They did some Detective Comics stuff, I think, and they did some other stuff. But I'll look up the artist's name for next time. But wow, beautiful artwork, and I'm really enjoying the story. It's fun. It's a fun book. So really good book if you are into kind of mythology, and it has a very fantasy feel to it too. But it's very, very good issue. I'm loving this series, surprisingly.
Yeah, that's why it was my pick last week.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
And that was started by Jack Kirby, right?
Originally, yeah, in the 70s, yeah. When Jack Kirby jumped ship from Marvel, DC gave him leeway to create new stuff, and it was the New Gods universe that he came up with.
Okay, so I'm going to do two in a row here. So the first one I have is called The Brood. I read number 1 a while back, so this one I think had been sitting with me for a while. And for those of you that are not familiar, this is a spin-off of the comic Minor Threats, which I was kind of curious to check out because I really like the concept. And so this is about a supervillain family, and I think like the main bad guy and his sons and daughters that do various kinds of they become their own supervillains, I guess, or villains. And so I just really like the concept. I even do think that some of the characters are very interesting and well developed, but maybe I was in a bad mood. I don't know, but I had mentioned earlier, this one has I don't know what they're trying to do here. So every 2 pages we have a location change, and it's not done well. It doesn't. I'm not clear why we need a location change for the same character, and sometimes a new character, and then sometimes a temporal change. Back in time or whatever. Every couple pages, and that just, to me, I found that to be very difficult. And I don't know in other narrative structure as a structure in other kind of narrative forms where that works well. And I'm just like, you're losing your reader here. So and so I'm disappointed because I do think the first one had good potential. Like I said, I think I might go back and read the original series. I think it's written by Patton Oswalt, so it sounds kind of interesting. But so by the the last 10 pages or so, I felt I was kind of skimming it, so that's not a good sign. So it was really disappointing for me. But like I said, I maybe I was in certain headspace, and but I just don't. I was trying to think, like, even in maybe they're trying to make it seem like there's a lot of fast-paced movement or whatever, but the characters themselves, you don't see them like moving at light speed, or that just doesn't work for me. So they're just jumping from place to place, and I found it to be difficult to follow. So
yeah, I think that's the thing, though. I think if you're in a certain mood and just not in the right headspace, something you may otherwise enjoy, maybe not this one, but just in general, that you may not enjoy something that you would otherwise. So yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah, and that's a choice that they made. So, right. Okay, so my last one, and I have to say, I this was a week where I was not able to have a pick of the week because I have a certain This needs to be a certain something. And so this is my the last comic I'll talk about, and this is Lower Decks #1 by IDW from Ryan North and Derek Charm. And for those of you that are not familiar, I think this is a Paramount Plus animated series, and I think it's for younger people. But I'm a Star Trek fan, I guess. Maybe not like a diehard or whatever, but so I knew what they were doing with a few things. And you have characters that they're centering on characters that are not on the main, that are not the main bridge crew. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And I had never seen the animated series, but I think the humor is trying to be too self-aware, and I don't know, it's just not always working for me. So it's really skewing for a younger audience, I think. Unless, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it is. But one of the things I will highlight that I thought was kind of nostalgic and younger people would not know this is they showed almost scenes from the old Star Trek animated series in here, and it was actually done very well. So for the nostalgia people, they probably, I guess like me, I did appreciate that. So it's not that it was terrible or anything, but it just didn't work for me, and I think it really skews for a much younger audience.
The comedy's tough in comics, I think.
Yeah, and
depending on the type. Yeah.
The artwork is probably almost identical to what you see in the animated series, I think. Like very basic, kind of like Simpsons-esque. Kind of not, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. No pick this week. Wow, it's a bold move, Mike. Let's see how it works out for you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the first time ever. This is a game changer.
Yeah, it's uncharted territory. No, there's been weeks when I thought I don't have a pick, and then at the last minute I thought, well, that's good enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, some weeks just doesn't do it for you. So.
Well, moving into the pick of the week. For me, I got The Savage Sword of Conan, #7. Surprise, surprise. This has a fantastic cover by, I think it's Kevin Hawley. And this magazine size comic, issue #7, is a standalone. So you can just buy it and read it. You don't have to have there's no follow-up stories from previous issues or anything like that. And this particular one, the story's by the famous Conan scribe Roy Thomas, and by the fantastic artist Roberto Della Torre, who, out of all the artists working today, reminds me most of the great John Buscema from the 70s runs of Conan. And this story was just almost the perfect Conan story for that we had come to expect from Roy Thomas over the years. And I really dug it. It was almost a full length of the issue. And these Savage Sword of Conans, by the way, are 64 pages, and they're only $7. So compared to 24 pages for $6 from Marvel, you're getting a lot. And it's all black and white, beautiful black and white artwork. Great story. It had nobody has Conan down like Roy Thomas does, and there was plenty of Conan moments in there where you just like, nobody else would do that except for the Conan. And it had all the right buttons to push if you're a Conan fan, and I was just thrilled reading the whole thing. I was just like, wow, this is so good. And they don't make them like this anymore. They really don't. So I was very happy with this issue. And of course, it comes with these magazine-size things come with pinups as well, which are always a bonus. And they come with a little tiny article in the center. And there was one little backup story in here that was like 8 or 10 pages, and that was pretty cool too. It was a little Western type story that had to deal with a wicked bear. So it was neat, and another story with great artwork by Patrick Zerger as well. And so I just like, you don't have to go back and get the older issues to enjoy this. Like I said, it's a standalone, number 7, brand new on the probably brand new last Wednesday, but I highly recommend it. And you don't, like I said, you don't need a ton of history about Conan in order to get this story. As long as you generally know most comic readers generally know who Conan is, or even movie buffs will generally know who Schwarzenegger played at one time, and you'll get the gist, and you'll be able to dive right into the story and enjoy it for what it is.
Nice. It's nice when you can just jump on and enjoy it without a ton of content. I think that's another reason why Conan is still going strong, is because there isn't so much continuity. I mean, there's continuity, but it's not. He's not as beholden to it as other characters are.
Yeah, his continuity isn't the kind where if you miss something, you won't understand something later in his life. Mm-hmm. He went through a whole bunch of adventures when he was younger. You know that, and you know that he continues to go through adventures, and as he goes along, and he becomes king eventually. But that's pretty much all you need to
know. There is also another separate Conan series. Is that also Titan Comics, or is that Marvel?
Yes, no, that's Titan. There's a Conan the Barbarian, which is the regular comic size, and then there's Savage Sword, which is the magazine size. And
I read one of those, and I don't know why I didn't continue. I think, again, I probably said this twice now, but I just didn't. I wanted to read I'm one of those people. It's probably bad, but I'm like, I want to read but now I think I'm convinced now. I'm going to pick up the next one. I might pick up this one. It sounds that good, so you got me sold here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this be a good one to pick up.
All right, so my pick of the week this week was, I think, a surprise to anyone really who's been listening, or any of you here recording today. But so every week when I make my pick, I usually have something of an idea of which one's going to be the pick. But sometimes another book just sticks in my head and I can't stop thinking about it, and then ends up being the pick of the week. It kind of happened this week with The New Gods and Dust to Dust were both up there they were kind of competing, but I just could not stop thinking about The End of the War by Garth Dennis and Becky Cloonan. So this is quite the finale, quite the end. Now the very end, I'm still trying to decide if it was done for shock value or if it made sense in the story. But either way, I cannot stop thinking about it. And this book, the whole story, I think, especially the end, kind of forces you to reflect on how comfortable we all are, and all the how fake a lot of it is, and when things get real, and things can fall apart very, very quickly. I mean, we can descend into madness within a few hours within the right conditions, and everyone goes from caring about what your selfie looks like in social media to going just trying to survive. So it can all collapse. It's all a house of cards that thankfully has not collapsed yet. Hopefully we don't get to that point. As much as I dislike that kind of social media. Anyway, it does get you to reflect on how kind of it's just a curtain that gets pulled back, and at the end of the day, it's just it can all fall apart. So I think it's a fitting end. I didn't expect a happy ending to this story, but I did not expect it to be this rough. It was rough, but it does make it most of it makes sense. Just the very, very end was what I'm confused about a little bit. But maybe I missed something along the way. But yes, this story will, especially the end, will stick with you. It reminds me of the other Hello Darkness story that was the two social content creators who were kind of eating gross foods and trying to outdo each other a few months back. That one is another one that really stuck with me. It was so messed up. Well, this one, again, not only because of the finale, just the whole story was the first entry I wasn't as on board, but once it got rolling, it was very good. I'm guessing they're going to release this as a collection of just the war, because I'm assuming it's very popular. But yeah, wow, it is quite the finale. Quite the finale. Yeah. So it's something. Yeah.
Since I haven't read it yet, I'm going to admit, Steve, that I muted. I turned down the volume so I didn't hear everything because I still have to read it. But I wonder, had you actually heard? Are they going to make this its own standalone, or is it just something you're anticipating?
No, I haven't heard. I'm just anticipating because Ennis and Clunan, they're two of the bigger names in the industry. I mean, it's to have two big names on an anthology series like this, for it to go on this many months. I'm assuming they're going to release it as a collection. I think it'd be kind of silly not to, because I'd buy it, but it'll be nice to reread it in order again, just to go through it again.
It might only be like 50 pages if you put it all together. I wonder.
Yeah, probably. It'll be like about 50 pages. But wow, the whole story was very done very well. Great artwork. The dialogue. I mean, it all makes sense. But it all makes sense. Comes full circle. There's things that you're mentioned in the first issue. I kind of you think back on and it makes sense. It all kind of fits together. So it's kind of rare that happens, that there's little things in the first, the beginning of a story, and at the conclusion, you think back on those things and say, okay, it all makes sense. It all connects. So when it happens, it's very cool. So it's tough to finish a story. Stephen King still hasn't figured it out. I'm kidding, King fans. Calm down.
No, there's something to be said for a great ending. There really is. Some of my favorite series have great endings. That's what I like about them. So,
I think because I like A Song of Ice and Fire, I can easily say I don't need a great ending because I don't think I'll ever have one. So I can live without a great ending. But you're right. Yeah, it's when it does happen and it all comes together. It means that they've thought about that way in advance. They had the ending and then they're writing to the ending. And sometimes everything just falls in place. I think something about Becky Cloonan's artwork, I like the way she depicts kind of people's emotions on their faces or their eyes. There's something about it that just is really spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, so that's issue 77 is in the books. The first one, our Mike didn't have a pick. Oh, Mike, that's cool though. I mean, I think that's good though, because if something's not up there to the pick of the week standard, then it's not, and that's okay. So I think everyone can relate to that. Just there's some weeks that are just not as good as others. Just doesn't have the umph. So that's cool. Yeah. So until next time, Jared, where can people find you?
Oh, you can find me at the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel. And you can find me on this podcast, Speculative Speculations and the Oscar Project, and maybe a few other shows here on Page Chewing as well.
Just a couple. Just a couple. We recently hit 500 published episodes on the podcast, and I thought, how many of those were with Mike, Jared, Varsha, Chris? It's pretty wild. I think probably a good half of them at least, I think. It's pretty amazing. Think about it. But yeah. So we are still, I know we mentioned recently we're trying to find an older run. We did find some possibilities. We want to make sure that it's all copacetic before we share it with you. We don't want to share anything that's not legal to share. We did find some books, so we are going to finalize that, and then we'll let everyone know if you want to read along with us. It will be a free option. You won't have to pay for it. You can just read along with us and hear our thoughts and hopefully interact with us too. But if you'd like to connect with Mike or me or Jared, we find us on pagechewing.com. There are written articles that Jared and I and Mike occasionally do write. Mine are horribly written that you should not read, but I do it anyway. And come on and check that out and go to the forum and say hello. Come by and let us know you're listening. And if you have any suggestions for us, any feedback, we like interacting. So come by and say hi. So until next time, hope everyone has a fantastic week. Hope you enjoy your books, and I hope you have a pick of the week next week. We will talk to everyone soon.
Bye-bye.